today's Game Starter Game Audio. So today you're welcomed here by Gamecity Hamburg. My name is Dennis. I'm the project lead for Gamecity Hamburg. And we are a location initiative funded by the city of Hamburg to support the local industry we have here in Hamburg. And when I'm talking about the games industry in Hamburg, then I'm talking about 200 companies, game developers, marketing companies, but also lots of service providers and also many audio studios. And so what we are doing with our game starter events is that for each event, we pick one job and one profession in the games industry. And we are inviting industry professionals and talking about how they entered the industry and also what it takes to get a job in the industry. And so today we want to focus on the profession of a game audio expert. And so, yeah, we're well equipped for this. But let me say some more words about what we offer as location initiative Gamecity Hamburg. So since the last year, we started our new prototype funding. So what we can do is that we can fund studios to develop prototypes for games here in Hamburg up to 80,000 euros as a non-repayable grant. And also since last year, we have an incubation program where we bring in startups and young teams and then support them on the first steps to develop a new game. And so this Games Lift Incubator is also a service which we can offer to support the games ecosystem. Yeah, but there is also one big reason why we are doing this live today. So this is not pre-recorded. All of you can see us here live. And so we want to make the Game Starter event an interactive event, because basically we're only here to cover all of your questions. And so it's totally relevant that you bring in your comments, your questions into the chat. And so we are looking forward to hear your questions. So what is the agenda for today? What do we have here for you? So basically, this was this very short introduction that you know a little bit more about Hamburg. And I thought about, maybe you can count how often we will talk about it today, but this will be the first time. So I will tell you that we have a Discord, Gamecity Hamburg Discord. You find the link on our website. And already at this point, I can tell you that we have a channel on our Discord named Game Starter. And so you're invited also after the event to join the Discord and also, post your questions there. And let's keep on the discussion over at Discord here. But what I said for today, basically you have two possibilities so that you can bring in your questions. So we are live on YouTube. And you can post your questions and comments there. But at the same time, if you don't have a YouTube login, you can go to our website. And on our website, you will find also a chat and you can post your questions. So as I said, we will bring all questions in already during the event, but we will have a dedicated QA round in the end. So yeah, lots of time to cover all of your questions. And I'm not here alone. Before we come to our speakers, I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Maggie. Maggie is project manager at Gamecity Hamburg. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, hello everyone. As Dennis mentioned, I'm Maggie, project manager at Gamecity Hamburg, and Dennis and I are here tonight to ask a lot of questions to our expert panel, and we truly have an awesome panel tonight. I'm very happy to have these three people here with us tonight. Thanks so much for taking the time. It's Ben, Ivo, and Mathilde, and of course, we'd like to know a little bit more about you, about what your job is right now, how you got into the industry. So it would be great if the three of you could give us a quick impression. Ben, you want to start?
I would be happy to. Let's see. Let me get a little screen share going here because I have a beautiful little presentation for you all. I'm sure you're going to love it. So, before I get started, big thanks to Gamecity Hamburg for organizing this event. I definitely know what it's like to get into the game industry and have zero to little knowledge of what I'm doing, how to do it, what are the first steps, what are the next steps. And if there were great events like this back when I started, I certainly didn't know about them, and they probably would have saved me a lot of time and headache. So I'm really happy to come and share what I've learned and what I've experienced, and hope that I can help some of the people here who are watching the stream. I see Felix, I see Pedros, I see FredMax3, Chirac, a couple of other cool people who are on the stream with us. Thanks for coming by, and definitely leave us questions that you have. So my name is Ben. I started the small company Double Shot Audio with my colleague Indra a couple years ago in 2018. And basically, I'm going to fly through my background really quickly so that we can get right into the meat of the content for everyone here, or the tofu if you're a vegetarian. So basically, I started off, as many people in our industry do, as a musician originally. I grew up playing guitar. It's the only thing that I really knew how to do with any competency, so I decided to continue with it. After high school, I went to study in Boston. I studied music composition, mostly for commercial and film endeavors, and played in bands, toured the country a little bit. It was all music, music, music. I was aware of the gaming industry, but I never really considered getting into it, to be honest. And so after I finished my bachelor's degree, I actually went to South Korea and lived in Asia for a couple years. Fun, quick side note: the picture of the concert you see was actually headlined by Psy, like 2 months before Gangnam Style came out. And I, in the one of the greatest eras of my youth, had the chance to meet Psy, and I decided, you know what, we're playing at this concert for a university. I could meet this random Asian pop star I don't know anything about, or I could go hang out with a lot of young women in the crowd, and I decided to do the latter. And so who knows what might have happened had I become friends with Psy 2 months before Gangnam Style, but I don't want to spend too much time thinking about it because it just makes me sad. So yeah, after my time in Asia, I traveled the world a little more and ended up very randomly in Germany, where I did a master's program here at the University for Applied Sciences in Hamburg. And that's where I very randomly and with no plan ended up working with VR technology. I put on a headset one day because it was laying around, and I was very surprised at how far the technology had come without me really hearing anything about it. And so I wanted to learn more. Making 3D audio for VR was kind of a new, interesting thing, so it was great for a master's thesis. And so I wrote my thesis on sound design for VR, started working with Unity and with middleware, and did a master's project which was involved with the UNESCO World Heritage Site here in Hamburg, basically recreating some machinery and interesting scenes from Hamburg as it was about 100 years ago. And that was so much fun that I decided, after I was finished with my program, to start a company and start doing just games and VR and interactive audio of all types. Our first project was completely the opposite of 3D binaural immersive audio. It was Leisure Suit Larry, and it was a point-and-click adventure game, completely 2D, mostly mono, very little immersion outside of the, let's say, narrative immersion that one experiences with Larry. We were lucky to get this game as our first project because it went over really well with the audience. The audience loved it. I thought I got the other reviews. Some people definitely enjoyed playing this game, and that's what led us to do a couple others. Funnily enough, I know Mathilde and Ivo spent some time working for Dedelic, and we also very randomly had small roles in a few Dedelic games as well, mixing cinematic trailers and delivering a couple audio assets here and there for a few projects of theirs. We also did a VR project with Audi and a second Larry game. Despite the previous reviews, people wanted more. And one of our most recent projects was another VR game, a location-based VR game. Bad timing, but very fun, and I can't wait for the world to be able to see it at some point. And so I'll play just a quick half a minute of the trailer from that game so you can maybe get a small impression of what our work sounds like. Oh, not hearing the sound. Good to know that I must have shared my screen the wrong way, or...
We can hear the sound.
Oh, you can hear the sound. Sorry, I was told there was no sound coming through, but that's enough about me. Anyways, if you want to check out the trailer, just Google Ghost Patrol VR. All right. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben. Viewers out there, let us know via the chat if you could hear the sound or not, because yeah, for the topic of game audio, sound is of course quite important. And also Ghost Patrol sounded pretty good, so you shouldn't miss out on that. Thanks a lot, Ben. We have two more panelists tonight. Next up, we'd love to learn more about Ivo and how he found his way into the industry. Hi, Ivo.
Hello. Can you see the presentation?
Yep.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name's Ivo Sissolak. I'm from a place where my PowerPoint doesn't do what I ask it to do. 1 second. There we go. This is where I'm from. I'm from a beautiful place called Cape Town in South Africa. I lived in other parts of the world, but to cut it short, this is where I spent most of my life. This is what it looks like. It's a city with the mountain that looks like a table. We also have a stadium that got built for a World Cup, and it's never really been used since, which looks like a toilet seat. And this is where I studied. I studied at a college called City Varsity. It's a small little media hub with different courses in acting, film, animation, and sound engineering. And since I finished school a little bit early, I finished when I just turned 17. I thought instead of doing a gap year and going on a travel somewhere, let me just do this little thing called sound engineering. And that ended up being what I ended up pursuing as a career. So I did a 3-year degree in sound engineering, after which I did a bunch of different things. I recorded some horses, my cat, and tried a bunch of other more sound-related jobs, like working on film sets, doing location sound, and also working in the live sound industry, on concerts and beer fests. And then I also did some work in the animation and film industry for post-production and composition work. But I quickly realized that none of this was really making me happy. So in 2015, on the Global Game Jam, I made a game called Supermassive Crate Dash with the people on the right. And this was kind of my first game, proper game jam at least. And from then on, I knew that sound for games was what I really wanted to do. And some of these connections that I made on this game jam, like Paul, the guy in the black and white stripes, we ended up working with the company he was working for and started getting into indie games and mobile games. So I worked on a bunch of indie games like these ones. The biggest one was Blazing Beaks, which I worked on for 3 years. And funnily enough, the developers for Blazing Beaks are actually not South African, they're Lithuanian, and they randomly found me over Twitter. But it was a lovely first project to work on. After that, or during that, I recorded some sound effects in the beautiful countryside of KwaZulu-Natal in East South Africa, or Eastern South Africa. And I also went into the townships in Cape Town and put my sound effects up online and learned a little bit about field recording. And then in 2017, I was lucky enough to move to Hamburg, which is where I met some of these people, like Maggie and Mathilde, working at Dedelic. First on Pillars of the Earth, then on State of Mind, and my last game there was A Year of Rain. In 2019, I decided to leave Dedelic and join IO Interactive in Sweden. And here I worked on Hitman 3 in 2020. And on the left, you can see my sound squad that I'm currently working with. And that is me and my cat on a conga.
Thanks a lot, Ivo. I think you interviewing the horse is my favorite picture for tonight. I'd love to hear that sound too. Yeah, thanks a lot. I already have a lot of questions, but first I'd love to hear from Mathilde how she found her way into the industry. Hi, Mathilde.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I can only agree to Ben that it's awesome that you're hosting this about game audio. And I'm happy to share my perspective if everything goes right and the people can actually hear the audio. If not, it's not too bad. We are used to audio problems. All right. So yeah, my name is Mathilde Hoffmann, and I'm a sound designer and composer. When I was a young girl, I had two passions. I was listening to a lot of music, and I was madly in love with video games, especially Nintendo games. This is a very bad cosplay of me trying to be Toad or a green mushroom. I don't even remember, but I loved Nintendo games. And I went to basically to a music gymnasium. So like my secondary school had a music focus, and we had to learn all sorts of classical music stuff, such as notation software. And we were forced to like transcribe some opera songs into this notation software. But I found that pretty boring, and I sort of made it my hobby to transcribe video game music instead. I had this mad Zelda hype phase where I would just go and transcribe all kinds of Zelda songs into this notation software called Capella. It was not even something great like Sibelius or whatever cool notation software is out there. It was some niche, cheap notation software. Not sure if you can hear it. If you could hear it, well, you can also see it. It was like my transcription of Kokiri Forest. I would always like plug my headphones in and then listen to like 1 second of the music and then go like, okay, those were the notes, and when transcribing that. And this is basically my first step into game audio, really. I was like 13 years old when I started doing this, and did lots and lots more until my sister one day said like, if you can transcribe that music, why don't you just start composing music? And I was like, she has a point. And my first compositions were also made using that music notation software. I was very like classically trained. We had to learn an instrument and sing in a choir and stuff and use notation software. And I thought that this is the way that everybody composes. I had like no idea about music software. This was all that I knew. but I was like more and more dead set onto I want to be a games composer one day, like Nintendo is the dream. And it was so much my dream that this was basically my graduation picture. I was very convinced that I would one day make it in the games industry somehow. So what I did after my music education is I applied for college, for music college, and I tried to get into something where I didn't have to play piano, because I couldn't play the piano. I had always played guitar, but most of the sort of studies required piano knowledge. But I managed to find one that's called music design, where you could basically apply and you had to take some sort of entrance exam, but you didn't have to play the piano. You just had to show that you can within 3 hours come up with some music idea. And this was my year, this was my semester. We were 12 people, and we learned all kinds of stuff. We learned, for example, about the art of Foley art, where you just take a lot of random things and you try to think outside the box what you can use to put whatever you can see on the screen to life acoustically. Like this, for example, right here, I'm trying to imitate the sound of a dog walking over gravel. And because like most of the time there's a little bit of sand and this chain thingy, it sort of had the right sound of what the claws on the surface of stone would make. So that was a Foley workshop I attended. And I also started going to my first game jams, with very little sleep and lots of screen time. And then it was time to apply for what is called Praxissemester in Germany, like a practical semester. And I applied for 2 companies that I very, very, very much looked up to. That was Dedelic Entertainment and Amanita Design. And I put like all of my efforts into like the application. I wrote a custom song for Dedelic, like I covered some of their songs and whatnot, because I just knew I wanted to get into the game industry. And luckily enough, the application for Dedelic Entertainment worked out. And this is where I met Ivo. And the application for Amanita Design, unfortunately, did not work out because they are not working in a way that's suitable for taking interns. But a bit later, after my internship at Dedelic Entertainment, we actually got to visit Amanita Design offices and also the composer, Floex, and had a small chat with him in his offices. And that was such a great experience. So yeah, both of these applications worked out somehow. I'm very, very grateful for that. And I worked on, as Ivo mentioned in his presentation, The Pillars of the Earth and State of Mind. And thankfully, through that connection to Dedelic, we had the opportunity, me and Felix, who you could see on the right photo with the thumbs up, we worked together on Unrailed, which was published by Dedelic Entertainment. And this is the last thing I'm going to tell about me is because, I have that musical background, but my internship at Dedelic was actually a sound design internship. And me personally, I love most when like sound and music come together. And this is why Unrailed is such a special project to me, because this is where the both worlds sort of melt together. And in case you can hear audio, I'm going to show a little example of how that works in the game Unrailed. Exactly. So if you haven't noticed, it was the weather changing that led the music to have different effects on it as well. Yep, that's all about me. And I think we are ready to dive into the meat or tofu, as Ben said.
Yes, let's do that. Thanks to all three of you. We will go a lot more into detail in a sec. I think it's interesting how different your ways into the games industry were, from Mathilde, who always wanted to work in games audio, to Ben, who actually wanted to become a K-pop music star, I guess. I'm glad it worked out this way. Yeah, but first of all, the topic for today, as you know, is game audio, which we do realize is a very wide field of separate topics. So just to get everyone on board, could the three of you quickly tell us what different things fall into that field of game audio and which ones you're working on? We heard a lot about composing. Yeah, but I think there's more.
I think Mathilde is the industry veteran, so she can probably give everyone. Been doing this for like half your life.
Well, I mean, Ivo was my boss at some point, so I would call him the industry veteran anytime. But well, I feel like for me as a freelancer, at least the disciplines that I cover are sound design, music design, and music composition. And then in implementation is a part of it as well, or at least like the basic knowledge of how you can make your sounds work in the game. I'm not that much into the coding side of things. I know about middleware and I know how to set things up in middleware, but the step to implementing it into the engine is still something that, in my case, I would have close contact with the programmers and they would set it up in the game so that it works. So yeah, apart from that, I mean, I mentioned Foley recording a little bit, and Ivo mentioned field recording as well. So like knowing the difference of different microphone types and maybe thinking outside the box a little bit, like what props you could use to create all kinds of different sounds. That is definitely something that's part of the job of a sound designer. Also like the recording side of things, mixing things. When you have like a game soundtrack, you want all the tracks to sound good. You want them to be the same loudness. So mixing is also mixing and mastering, keeping an eye on the audio levels. That's also something that's part of it. If I forgot anything, please help me out. I think Ben knows way more about implementation, for example, than
I
me.
think you hit the three biggest umbrellas. I mean, whether you are a master of one or a generalist in all three, and there are lots of things that fall under each, but mainly sound design, music composition, and then the implementation aspect are kind of the three big terms that we can then dive into in more detail.
Would you say that you yourself specialize in one of those, I guess, three fields?
I suppose you're kind of forced as a freelancer or a small company as we are to wear the hats that the customers ask you to wear in many instances. For example, my bachelor's degree was music composition, but just as it happens, almost all of the projects that have come our way since starting our company have been sound design, and they already had a composer on board or didn't need much or any music at all for one reason or another. So even though that's actually more my specialty, that's just what came my way in the end. And so at this particular moment in time, I would say, based on what I've been doing for the last 2 years, I'm more specialized in sound design now than music composition. So it kind of changes. If you're a freelancer, things come your way, and of course you have to say yes or no based on where you're at in your career. And if you want to pivot in a new direction, maybe you say yes to things that you're not feeling as much of an expert as at that moment in time. That's just how it rolls out, so to speak.
And Mathilde, I think you mentioned technical stuff like coding and how much one should know about that. I think that would be a question that if I wanted to start out in game audio, which I would ask myself a lot. Also, people who are watching tonight, feel free to post questions to the chat at any time. But for now, my question would be, in what software, especially game-related software, should one be proficient in if they want to start out as a game audio expert? Or what do you, how deep is your knowledge in those fields, and how did you learn them? Ivo, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's different software. There's the sound creation part, which happens in the DAW and or DAW. And funnily enough, Mathilde actually, I learned to use several DAWs during my studies: Pro Tools, Reaper, and Cubase, and they all had a different sort of purpose and use. But I kept using Cubase, and then when I moved to Hamburg and started working at the Delic, Mathilde actually convinced me to use Reaper, which is it's just the best. Use Reaper. Not sponsored by Reaper, but
you should be.
So that's for the software side. I mean, everybody says this. It's a matter of preference, and every DAW has their strengths and their weaknesses. And then when it comes to the implementation or the middleware, which you will most likely use as well. There's either Wise, Fmod. There's also Fabric, but Wise and Fmod are like the industry standards. And then you can also do it right in the engine, in the engine that you're using with the native sound engine. We used Unreal Sound Engine for State of Mind, for example. So it all matter. It depends on budget because some things are just more expensive, like Nuendo, for example, which is kind of like Cubase, costs like €1,000, and Reaper costs like 50. So and they pretty much do exactly the same thing. So yeah, that's it depends answer.
Yeah, I think it's also talking about middleware. It also depends a little bit. I feel like Fmod is way more prominent in the indie field. Way more indie studios use Fmod because there's also a pricing category to that up until a certain budget, Fmod is usable for free. And I think Wise has a lower threshold at where it starts costing something, but it's sort of the established middleware for AAA. Can you confirm that, Ivo? Do you use Wise at IO?
Yes, we do. I think most AAA use Wise, or maybe even their own sound engine. But I think it depends. But I think you're right about it being an indie favored middleware Fmod.
I think you're touching already on a really great point, which is if these are softwares that you have not learned yet, you're interested in learning, then you might consider starting with one or the other depending on what direction you're trying to go in. If you want to get your start as an intern or as a junior at a AAA studio, then you might want to attack Wise first because it's a very standard piece of software in AAA productions. And if you're saying, no, I prefer working with indies, and what do I need to use in that case, then generally speaking, you're leaning more towards Fmod. I'd like to share another quick tip, which I remember from a recent gang event, the Game Audio Network Guild. They shared their analysis of all the open job applications in the game audio industry from, I want to say 2019 or 2020, whenever it was, and 50% of those applications listed middleware and game engine competence as a must-have and not a nice-to-have. So I have not actually been working professionally in game audio for that long, but my understanding from that discussion was that that number is rising, so to speak. These used to be pieces of software where it was great if you had a little knowledge of them or a basic understanding, but not completely necessary. Now the stakes are being raised a little bit, is what they tried to impress upon everyone at that particular talk. So at the very least, you know, a small amount of competency, a familiarity with middleware and with game engines too, if you can afford to, you know, if you have that much time to dive into all of these different things, then that's not going to be bad for your resume.
And let's say someone has all the time. How do you educate yourselves about new software or software that you think one should know about when they're starting as a game career? We had a question in the chat that touches that a little bit. I would love some input on education options specializing in game audio, sound design, and composition.
We've actually been doing a little bit of recruiting at IO, and we just recently did some interviews with for internships, and we looked at we got sort of unsolicited applications, sort of blind because we didn't have any openings, and those were mainly from a sound or game sound focused college or university in Denmark. And so there are those kinds of institutions. They are not, they're very rare. Like there's, I think just a handful that actually specialize in game audio. And I think all of us didn't study game audio. We sort of drifted into it, or we chose to go into it and learn the tools ourselves. But I think there are institutes these days, but a lot of it can be self-taught, or because everything is fairly open source and or accessible, and so there's a very low barrier to get into that, to learn the tools. To get into it, it's a little bit it's a different topic, but
the great thing about especially learning stuff in game audio is that there are some really cool resources where you can practice. Like, for example, on the Wise and on the Fmod pages, there is this like learning tab. I know it especially for Fmod. They offer like some games that you can download for Unity, for example. You can just have your game project and they will explain you step by step like how the audio is implemented, and you can just exchange the sound files and see what what happens in the game. So that already the learning is a little bit like working on a game, which is something I love, that is very hands-on. There is a super good stream pre-recorded from the sound designers of Celeste, Power Up Audio. They had like a 3-hour long stream where they went through their Fmod project, looked at every single like sound file they created for the game, and said how that was implemented in the game, why it works that way in Fmod. They showed some cool features. Like I haven't like gone through all of those 3 hours, but I've learned so much from the first like stopping every 10 minutes, taking notes, copying it to my Fmod project. So what I think is great is if you can get like your hands on an already like working game, and then really try to exchange the sounds, implement something different, really experiment with something that is already a game. That is an approach that I would strongly recommend. But there are some really great YouTube channels as well. So I feel like all of my specific game focused knowledge was like either trying stuff at game jams or like watching the right YouTube channels. So yeah.
I would also just add to that really quickly, if I may. I think that whatever you're trying to learn, you kind of most importantly need to understand how you best learn and seek out the tools that work for you. There's a funny dichotomy in my company with my business partner, Indra. I am a super practical person. I want to pay money for a course or a video or whatever to have someone show me exactly how a thing works. And I want them to just step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's how it goes, and then I'm done, and I'm happy. And he's completely the opposite. He loves to just go in with zero knowledge and just breaks things and slowly learn by sniffing around in every nook and cranny of the software until he understands it completely and deeply. And there's a reason why he's our CTO and I am not, because in a way, in many cases, I like to just speed run through something. Like, do I understand this enough to make, to do what I want to do with it? If yes, I'm finished, and I'll take some time maybe later to look at some advanced functions, but for right now, this works for me. So whether you like to blaze through forums for hours at a time and learn well that way, or whether you just really love to show up to a course and have just that front facing, someone tells you how a thing works. If it works for you, then that's the best way to do it, and don't try to do it any other way.
Mathilde, the video you mentioned about Celeste, so please feel free to also post it later on in our Discord. It sounded interesting. And I would like to bring in one question out of the chat, because somebody asked, do you have any experience on Fmod or Wise in terms of the performance of a game? So did you experience differences when it comes to the performance side?
I think that depends very much on what you're doing with it and the settings that you've chosen. I would be surprised to learn whether Wise or Fmod would have a gigantic difference in performance with the same assets and the same settings. I don't think that's anything to bother worrying about.
Okay, we are trying to ask most questions that are posted in the chat, but for deeper technical questions, I think it's best to head to our Discord after the event, because I think there are a lot of game audio experts who are very happy to go in that discussion. But for now, we'd like to look a little bit broader and learn more about the job in general. And one thing that's super interesting to me as an outsider is what also Mathilde mentioned before, that she did some Foley artistry, sounds with Foley
that sounds
tricks.
really nice. Let's always phrase it like that.
Yeah, so actually for the three of you, how much do you work with sound libraries, and how many of the sounds that you are using in games do you create yourself, and how do you create them? Mathilde, you want to start because you started the topic?
Yeah, sure. I feel like it's necessary to have sound libraries because some things are just super hard to find in real life. I remember, like, for the Pillars of the Earth, we needed a lot of horses sounds. Funnily enough, we had that picture of Ivo recording horses, but I don't know if you used, I don't think you had these recordings with you, because we were struggling to find like enough different samples. We like had the same horse sample thrown on every horse at some point in time. So we tried to go out and visit some pony place close to the Dedelic offices. And then when we arrived there and we had bought carrots and stuff and we had our equipment with us, these horses would just not make a sound at all. So there are just some sounds that are super difficult to get your hands on, like explosions or gunshots and stuff. So of course you would have to rely on sound libraries for those, or be really creative with what you can use instead. But at the same time, like, I always love to tell the story about sometimes you can only get so far with your sound libraries. I had once the task to design the sound for like an owl that would have different owl. Is it owl? Owl?
Owl.
Owl. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Owl. Okay, yeah, and it would have different moods basically. Like, it should sound like happy at one time and a little bit disappointed at another time, and then angry at another time. So I was sitting here browsing through my owl sounds, and I would basically only find two types of sounds that would go either hoo hoo or like ah! So that was not enough variety to create like a whole creature that comes alive acoustically. So Felix, my good partner and friend who has very great ideas, he came up with this thing. It's called a rub mallet, and it's basically, it looks a little bit like a lollipop, but it actually has some friction. Like it's like a bouncing ball on a stick, and you can use it to like rub it on different surfaces, and it makes like, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but weird sounds. But we just found the exact right surface where it made this sort of, and then I could like, the more I put pressure on it, it would like change the pitch of it, and it would start sounding like some sensitive little bird. And that was the perfect source material, which saved this project for me in the end, because I could only get so far with the sound libraries. Okay, that's enough of me. What are the others saying?
Ben?
Actually, I was about to mention something that I think I'm going to pass along to Ivo, because we had spoken before about the power of the human voice. And I think you had a couple things to say on that topic.
Yeah, sure. So sometimes when you trying to come up with a sound, it's often helps to sort of just vocalize the sound effect, and it's not something that every sound designer does, but it's something that every sound designer should learn to do, because it also helps once you talk more like or you have more cross-departmental communication and you want to get your point across, it sometimes helps to actually sort of vocalize the sound effect that you're sort of envisioning. And so using your voice as sort of a prototyping step to building your sound, and also for composing, like when you're in the shower, or when you on a run or walk through a park, and you just get an idea and you want to jot it down, like that's the best tool, is just to record yourself on your phone or on a microphone that you have, and then later on you can draft that into something magical.
Nice. For Ben and Ivo, is there any component you ever designed that you were super proud of, or that you just loved? I'm sure there is.
Well, let's see. I mean, there have often been lots of just funny coincidences, or things that I this is one I would bring up, things that I tried to overcomplicate way too much, and the solution ended up being something so embarrassingly simple that I almost don't even want to mention it. But that was the human voice example. Is we're working on a game right now where there's a frog character, and I spent like hours trying to find frog sounds to make the frog sound like a frog. And at the end of the day, none of it worked. And I could not find any source material for just one single frog making that ribbit noise, that, that classic sound that everyone expects to hear when they see a frog on the screen. Because when you try to record a frog, you're usually in a swamp and there are about 2 billion other frogs around. You can't get a clean recording. And I tried like all of these ridiculous methods to try and separate one single frog, or find a frog, or find something that sounded like a frog and make it into a frog. And at the end of the day, I just got so frustrated, I pulled my microphone over to my face and I just started making frog noises. And in 15 minutes, I was done, because it worked so well. And I was so, it's like, so stupid.
Yeah, I think that's a great point with the overcomplicating, because in sound design, is oftentimes you have like a gigantic spaceship, and what is the first thing? I'm going through my sound library and I'm putting in like spaceship samples. But more often than not, it's like not the easiest way to just like find the spaceship sound and put it under, but it's also fun deconstructing it and thinking what is it that makes like a spaceship sound like a spaceship, and then you would maybe something would pop to your mind, like some synthetic drone or something, the engine rising, or maybe like the sound when you open like your trunk and at the car, the sort of sound. That's a very like popular source material actually for some engine or sci-fi sound. So basically thinking a little bit outside, or if you have like a car, an old car, you wouldn't just go type in old car. You would think like, where can I get some squeaky noises? Where can I get like the rusty thing? What makes it sound like a charming? Is it like more like a crappy old car and it has like, it sounds more like plastic? Or is it like a very nice, lovely old car? Then you would try to maybe even put in some voice croaks or something that would give it some character. So I feel like the thinking outside the box, not overcomplicating or not just seeing the product and only thinking, okay, what is the one sound effect for that, but thinking more in components that you can add to the sound to make it that thing, is one of the great things of sound design and Foley recording.
And there's a question that's sitting slightly behind this question that I think a lot of people also overcomplicate. There's no right or wrong way to get the right sound at the end of the day. And you're not a worse sound designer because you use more library sounds or less library sounds. As long as you get the job done, then, you know, that's really what the end goal is. And having the time and the energy and the, you know, creative ideas to maybe whip out your microphones and go record something is really great. And it's a whole lot of fun. I definitely, you know, I do that as much as I can. And it's also not, using sound libraries is not cheating in any way, because it's very rare that you just open up a library, type in what you need, and you just pluck it out already done, and you don't have to do anything. You still have to be incredibly creative, mixing and mashing weird sounds that you never would have expected to use in order to create whatever you're seeing on the screen. So thinking outside of the box and being creative is necessary in both areas, whether you're recording your own sounds or you're creating them from a library. And one is not better than the other, and you're not better or worse for doing it one way or the other.
Wise words.
So two of you are working as freelancers. Ivo is working on a team. But I guess that in your day-to-day job, making sounds or finding the right sounds and composing is not everything you're doing. So I guess it's also, especially for the freelancers, a lot of project management. So what should a career starter expect? How much project management or outside stuff aside from making the game audio itself does the job involve, and what skills should we have if we want to do that job?
Oh, you opened up Pandora's box with that question. I would say I'm in the lucky position. Even if there are only two of us, we are still a team that can, you know, divide and conquer in terms of what our skill sets are. And obviously, if you're working on your own, you don't have necessarily the luxury. I personally love the biz dev aspect of our job. I like you know, marketing and customer acquisition and all of the trendy business words that one might use to basically, you know, invoke the act of finding projects and customers and doing work for them. And my business partner likes a lot of the techie aspect, the back end programming, and taking care of a lot of you know, the internal things that we need to work for us to even show up externally as a company, so to speak. But I would say a surprising amount of my work week has nothing to do with sound design at all. A very surprising amount. And I would guess even for maybe Ivo can touch on this more for me and for the rest of the stream, because I've never worked in a company. I've only done this on my own. But is that even the case that in your job as a sound designer in a company, as part of a sound design team, that you even do sound design most of the time? Or do you have a bunch of other tasks as well?
Oh yeah, it's a lot of communication. It's and I think the higher up you get, so if you're the bigger the company and the smaller you are, the more you can concentrate maybe on your task and on your area that you're actually hired to do. But communication, planning, time management, all of that stuff that doesn't really that you don't really think about. You just think about the creative process and maybe implementation. that is it's a surprising amount. And the more responsibility you get, the more of it you have to do. And then it becomes a balance between saying no to some things and just managing your time, and just being aware that it's not just the craft that you do.
I remember also from my time as an intern at Daedalic Entertainment, we spent like 2 months or 3 months even with audio QA, which is also like a big part that sometimes gets overlooked. Like before the game gets shipped, you definitely have to test your sounds in the game because you know best how they were intended to sound and if they don't sound right. And I mean, I can totally understand that some playtesters might turn off the music at some point, maybe because they've heard it like hours. Maybe they don't, but in my experience, sometimes they do. And then it's just great to be you yourself to go through it and do a lot of testing and reiterating. And you always have to plan some time for that as well. And we really spent a lot of time at Pillars of the Earth, just with Sound QA, finding all the bugs. Yeah.
One thing that I would maybe suggest, especially to anyone who is or is going to be working as a freelancer, is compartmentalizing your time, because you need to do your work for your clients, but you also need to do the work for yourself, i.e. there's the difference between working for the business and working on the business, because the business doesn't move forward without that fuel that you have to put into it in between, doing your tasks for the games that you're working on, or doing the QA, or whatever thing you're working on right now that's bringing you the paycheck. But if you want to continue making, getting the next paycheck, then you have to make sure that the engine is running, and that's where all of the networking and being active online and having an up-to-date portfolio and there are lots of ways to go about presenting yourself, finding clients, but you have to dedicate a certain amount of time to it. Otherwise, it will fall by the wayside, and you'll have a situation which happened very much to our company. We started the company, and very soon afterwards, we got that first job with Leisure Suit Larry, and they were on a very tight time limit. And so we basically just immediately jumped, both of us, full-time, 40 hours a week, doing sound design and implementation for Larry until it was done. And then it was done, and we patted ourselves on the shoulder and said, "Ooh, good job. What's the next project?" And we looked around, crickets, because there was no next project, because we had not worked at all on acquiring a next project. And then we had 2 months of just like utter, wow, we are really dumb, and we're going home with nothing these 2 months because we did not prepare ourselves. So when you make a catastrophic mistake like that, it's easy to learn from, but I'm hoping that someone in this stream can avoid that kind of mistake, and really set aside that crucial time to work on your business and not only for your business.
So Ivo said it in the introduction when you mentioned that one project came to be because of basically your Twitter account or a tweet you posted there. Do you have a perspective on it? Is the website the thing to have? Are it specific platforms you should be on as a freelancer? Are it social platforms? Are it networking events, business events? Do you have like the thing? These are the main pillars. You see the most contracts come.
Yeah, these are the pillars of the earth. No. So I started out freelancing, and I had very little luck. I actually had my dad, who was sort of my business acquiring partner. He had friends in the film industry, and he hooked me up with those. But I learned that a lot of this comes down to who you know, and the contacts you have. And this is probably one of the most important things to have, like when you're still doing your education, when you're still starting out, before you enter the industry, it's really, really useful to make contacts, to be on a forum, or put yourself on the social on social media, establish like a social media presence. I know it can be very stressful because you might feel like you need to be this other person online and be all professional. But the most important thing is just getting to know people, establishing just friendly rapports with people, and that's where you will most likely get your jobs, unless you're a genius in marketing and business acquiring. But probably most people aren't starting out, so that's your way in, is get to know people. I know it's hard in these times because everything's online, but yeah, forums, Discords, Slacks, just posting there regularly, establishing your presence, making a name for yourself, and being friendly. I think that's sort of the keys, the pillars of.
Yes.
That's going to be a running gag for the rest of the.
Yeah, I think
also when we are talking to students from Gamecity Hamburg, there are some quick wins. So it's never too early to have a LinkedIn account, and if you have a Twitter, then feel free to share like the latest works from game jams or like hobby projects or whatever. So it's never too early to put things out and make them visible. And so yeah, like then maybe sometime it's only a tweet and then you get in contact with somebody.
Yeah, Game Jam is a great way to get started, like and also to network. You get to know a lot of people who are either already in the industry or who are at least the same as you, probably very excited about the industry or interested, and might one day become potential developers who might remember you from that fun game jam you had together and ask you. And I think it's what is a difficult aspect of the networking side is that it just takes time. It takes quite a lot of time until from when you have met somebody until that might maybe turn out to be a client one day. So I feel like it's difficult starting out as a freelancer from the start without having built up that network. So I think I can very much relate to Ivo saying that his partner was basically his business partner in that regard. Like when you are starting out, like I used my time when I was in university to go to game jams and already like try to go to a Maze Festival, Gamescom maybe. I had my semester, like my internship at Dedelic, that helped getting to know a lot of people in Hamburg, especially who are involved in game development, because yeah, Dedelic has somehow very far like network of people who have worked there or are still working there or are gonna work there. So
Deep
that
roots.
Yeah, it's true. And I think like even me, after finishing my studies, I had a part-time job at a recording studio for 1.5 years to make a living while I was building up my network on the side. So I feel like either you have the chance to still maybe live at home or like have maybe cheaper rent or something. If you have that possibility, it's not shameful to use it to start out building your network, because it just takes time. You might be very talented and crafty, but like the people have to get to know you first, and then it might take a while until they have the right project where they can ask you and pay you actually. So it takes a lot of time, it takes patience, but it will something will come to fruition if you just show yourself regularly at events like all the meetups and the game jams, and people will know you if you just put yourself out there. It just takes some time.
Which means it's never too soon to start. Even if you're starting from zero, you know, that the amount of time you have to put in just for people to even start recognizing your face and connecting you with the term game audio, it takes so long that you don't want to wait until your portfolio is perfect or your reel is amazing or you've somehow, you know, magically now you have enough experience. Who can say that? You know, you really don't want to wait at all, even if you know nothing about game audio yet. If you're even, you know, minimally interested in a career in game audio, then you should already be attending events, already be active in the scene. And you don't have to lie and pretend like you're a pro. You can just say, hey, I'm someone who's completely new and I'm interested in learning more. And let's take a look around, interact with other people, learn something new, share our experiences. And it just that process it takes so long. To give you an idea, it's maybe not the best analogy for this particular stream, but it's a bit like the stock market. You don't invest in stocks to get rich tomorrow. You invest in them to slowly and cumulatively build wealth over 20, 30 years. And when our company started out, the very first year that we were working, we had one project and one client in the first year. In the second year, we had 3 projects. And right now it's only February and we already have 5 projects this year. So it's just, at first it was a snail's pace, and it stressed us, of course, also to no end, like, why aren't we magically making, a buttload of money off of game audio? Well, looking back, nobody knew us in game audio because we had this very fast and unexpected transition where we hadn't been around and no one connected, my face or my business partner's face with game audio. So we had to slowly build up to that first, and it took quite a long time. But if you are always around and you deliver good work and become known for delivering good work, that news gets around and it pays off in the long run. So if you're looking for quick money, you're in the wrong place. But if you're looking to establish yourself and are willing to be patient, to be very patient, knowing that it will pay off if you show up and you put in the time and deliver the goods, so to speak, at the end of the day, then it will work out.
I totally agree. Only to have said it, when we're watching like the recent history in stock markets, there also might be other chances to get a return earlier or faster. But yeah, maybe we also find some shortcuts here today. And so I think I would also like to underline, when you did your introductions, then there were 3 similarities. So all of you did studies also in different fields. Then all of you worked at some point at a Hamburg-based company called Dedelic. And also 2 of you at least also mentioned game jams. And I would like to stick one moment at the game jams, because I also saw some questions in the chat. Do you have any specific, maybe also upcoming game jams you can talk about, or you have an opinion that I was going to attend them? Or would you say any game jam is a good game jam? Do as many game jams as you can. Mathilde, what do you think?
I feel like there's some game jams that are very that get a lot of attention, especially right now where you can't really meet up in real life. Like when you could still meet up, it was always great to go to the local game jams, of course. Like here, InnoGames hosted the Inno Game Jam and the Global Game Jam, so I went to those. But now that there's, if you look at itch.io, there's like this massive list, like every day is a game jam. All your life can be a game jam. That's a bit overwhelming, maybe. There are some very popular game jams that get a lot of attention, and I think those are also the ones that I would recommend, which are Ludum Dare, Global Game Jam. It's unfortunately a little bit too late for that. It was 2 weeks ago, and it will only be, it always is in the beginning of the year usually. And Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam, which is most of the time in like October or something, more in the autumn direction of the year. That is also a very popular one. Sometimes you can, maybe also see, like if you're active on Twitter, you will probably hear some people talking about, excited for blah, blah game jam. And then you will know, okay, people are talking about that one. Then I think it might be a good idea to look out for that one. So there are, some very popular ones, Global Game Jam, Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam. If you have any more in chat that that are getting a little bit more attention, I think it's great. When the pandemic started, there was the Stay Safe Game Jam that was also a great one, because it had like support. like dedicated people from the industry that would help you like with your game development. There were some game audio experts that yeah, you could go to and ask them, oh, how do I implement the sounds in my game and things. So that is also very helpful if you just want to learn something new. Yeah, if you have like curated game jams where there are some experts who are willing to help, that's also great.
I can also highly recommend, like, don't think too globally. So the Global Game Jam is great, and I met cool people on it. But I also come from a very small knit, tight knit community of game developers, and so it's easier to sort of recognize who is who, and you can make a name much easier. And so try and look for local jams where you can, I mean, problem again with the pandemic situation, but also I think, Mathilde, you've done a couple of jams with the same people. I think this is also helpful to just establish a deeper relationship with some developers that you've already done a project on, because maybe one game might not have turned out great, but you still got along well, and then maybe the second one went really well, and then I don't know, the third one might actually be a proper project. So I think it's worth looking locally and where you can get together in your home city, if it's Hamburg or wherever you're living. I think, yeah, there's nothing wrong with sort of global jams, but it's harder to follow up on them because you need to stay in touch online, and that's usually quite hard.
Yeah. Also, one thing we would like to cover at our game starter events is the challenge for career starters to get a look into the industry and learning more about how is the workflow, what are important stakeholders. So I would like to talk a little bit about your experience when you're doing projects as a freelancer. So maybe you can give insights like, what are your contact persons? Are this most of the times persons who are into game audio and know what they are talking about? Or is it more like, okay, I have no idea, because then I hire a guy and then afterwards I think about what I really wanted? Can you give some insights there?
That is a complete mix and completely depends on the company you're working with. Sometimes I've had, our contact person at the company is actually the person who generally on smaller projects usually does the audio themselves, but they just don't have time right now. I've had that, and we've also had people who said, "Hello, need audio, please. Here's money. I don't know what you do. It's magic to me. Just I would like to wake up in the morning and my game has audio, so please deliver that." And whether we are in contact also with the entire team at once and everyone's pitching ideas back and forth, or whether there's really more or less just one person who is our main contact person and we don't actually really discuss much of the audio except on rare occasions with the rest of the team. That's also a personal choice / situation that very much depends on the customer, so to speak. And of course, we at the end of the day, we're service providers, and we're not only here to show up, make audio, exchange it for a check, and go home. Most of the teams we've worked with are good friends of ours now. We've done multiple projects with them. Even if we quit game audio tomorrow, we'll still be in touch with these people. It's not like that, but there is nonetheless the undercurrent of the business transaction. So we have to show up and do the job to our best ability based on the situation we find ourselves in, whether it's a very competent team in terms of audio and they know all about it and we don't have to discuss almost anything, they just get it, or whether they know less than zero and are depending on us for the game to produce even one sound, hopefully at the end of the day. Everything can be a little different.
And Ivo, you're working at a big company and like developing AAA games with lots of people working on it at the same time. So what are the most important stakeholders or team members you're in constant touch during a development for a game?
Stakeholders. Well, there are many departments in a AAA production. The ones that I interface with most. So on Hitman 3, I worked on the last 2 missions, but I also worked on the UI, the user interface sounds, and so I had to. For me, it was important to have a good rapport with the UI guys here at IO. So I had to sort of get to know them and work with them. And so I interfaced with them a lot. And then there are also dedicated producers for parts of the game or for a department. We were lucky to have a dedicated audio producer who took the nitty-gritty organizational administrative tasks that would take a lot of time for us to do. And so we were lucky that we had one of those, but yeah, so we interfaced with our sort of focus fields, and we also had a lead audio designer that sort of held the creative vision, the audio direction, and we had to obviously interface with him. Yeah.
So is it most of the times then in a big production that basically the lead on the team then has to decide for like every bigger like thing you bring into the game, or is it more than like some people are responsible for different parts and then they are basically the people who have to agree and greenlight the content?
Yeah, so for Hitman 3 we had a game director, and he was pretty much the vision keeper. So he would have to sign off every mission, and sort of one step down we had the art director and the sound leads and the environment art leads and the level design leads, and so they were in charge of their department to make the vision come to life. And we were lucky to have a very very cool lead, so we got a lot of slack, and we were allowed to sort of make our own creative decisions. We obviously had to clear it with him, but it was very we got a lot of responsibility for the things that we worked on, which is not a given in AAA, from what I've heard. In bigger AAA companies, there are, I think, more strict processes, but we're pretty lucky at IO.
So developing games usually is also a long process. So Mathilde, if you could make a wish, so from your perspective, are you like it more to be involved from the very beginning when there is the first concept art and you're already brainstorming together, or is it better or kind of easier to say like, okay, this is a scene, this is like all fledged out and we know what the game is like and now we put audio in it?
That's a good question, and it's also part of the previous question of who we are working with and who we communicate the most with. And I personally, I like the most being involved very early. There's 2 aspects to it. First of all, I think it's really cool to sort of take everything in, all of the concept art. Also because often in projects that I'm working on, I'm lucky enough to be working on music and sound at the same time, or at least to be involved in both of these things. I'm maybe not the only person working on it, but then it's great to sort of have to see the process from the start. It can have also the negative aspect of me producing something for, let's say, a demo version of the game, and then in the end the final product looks completely different, and you might have to throw away a whole lot of soundtracks that you made maybe. So in Unrailed we had the same problem of some of us composing with a vision of the game in mind, and then all of a sudden a game mechanic changed completely and we had to rethink everything. But at the same time, I think that's still a great thing, because you learn from that. You are involved with the team, and I kind of like about smaller game developer teams that you are involved with every single aspect of the game. For a smaller game project I'm working on right now, like every channel, the code channel, the art channel, the sound channel, like in every channel, everybody is still involved and gives their opinion, gives their feedback, can answer questions to whatever, because sometimes the question is more directed at the artist, like, how do you feel like this like concept music that I made catches the theme of what you had in mind when you were drawing this or that thing. But then in sound design, it can get more technical. Oh, do you think you can implement this with a different reverb on the footsteps? Is that something I should like render into the sound, or should we do that through the game engine? Then there's more technical questions, and I can ask the coders. So with my project so far, it has always been a communication with every team member, actually. And what I like about being on board early is that you are being trusted to sort of, how do I say this in English? To share your time in a correct way. Like if you wait with the audio until the last minute, it can be a very serious problem of when can I, like if every project were to ask me last minute, then I would not be able to make free time for anything that comes in. So if I'm from the start, I can always like take some time and start working on it and work on it continuously. Then if something last minute hits me, I know, oh, okay, well, I've already built like a backlog for this project. I can take a break here and squeeze this other thing in. So I'm very thankful for projects that have me on board very early, because the last minute things are very stressful and they take up all of your time. And if you have only these, then you can only like do one or two at the same time. But it's great if you're able to balance, maybe like Ben says, 5 projects at a time, but they would need you to, like they would need to trust you that you can work continuously on them and deliver that, even though the deadline is half a year away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about today about the important pillars to be a successful audio expert. So I think we touched game jams. We touched somehow working at the Delic at some point. But what is your perspective on the educational background? So what do you think today, after you finished your studies and you're in the job for a certain amount of time? What was really helpful for you, and do you think you would do it the same way, or do you think like more practical stuff would have brought you to speed at the same time? So what's your opinion on that?
I had so much on the job learning that I mean, it felt like just doing a second university program. I mean, I really sometimes ask myself, if I just started doing this 3 years earlier, or or however many years earlier, would it be that much different? Because there's so much that you really can't, unless you have a particularly good program that you've been involved with. There are lots of things that you just completely miss out on. So one thing I hated about my bachelor's program is that we studied how to compose music for like commercial products, but no one taught us the business aspect of, well, where do you get a job? Because most composers, a lot of composers, and many people working in game audio will at some point, if not for most of their career, work as freelancers. And that means you have to have some basic business skills in order to find jobs, meet potential clients, do some basic advertising for yourself and your services. And if you don't have any of those skills, you might be a creative genius who's gonna, make the next big thing, the next big splash in game audio. But if nobody knows who you are and nobody hires you to do a job, that doesn't really get you much at the end of the day. So my programs were all well and good. I wish they had a much stronger focus on the freelancing and the business aspect of working in the field, because unless you go work at a company, but even, and I'm sure Ivo and Mathilde, who've worked at companies, would agree, even working in a company, there are lots of things like, you know, time management and working in a team and all these other things that, you know, there's the university, like, oh, let's just meet up at some point and do some stuff and maybe it'll get finished at some point. But then there's this structured, you know, business atmosphere of a company that has to make money to keep the lights on at the end of the day. And there's a different flavor to that. So a lot of that, you know, a lot of that stuff that seems secondary, like, oh, as long as you can compose music or make good sound design, then you'll figure the rest out, is, I see it the opposite way around. If you don't know how to, you know, how to sell yourself as the right person for the job, then you're not going to get the job. And then it really doesn't matter much how great of a composer or a sound designer you are.
What I think is a benefit from all of these like more game dedicated studies that are growing everywhere, luckily, is that you already like with game jams, you build up a network basically of people who are as interested as you in the field and will probably start working there one day, hopefully. And these are your friends who will remember you maybe later. So I feel like many great game companies or like indie developers or something maybe met through university. And I think that is one of the benefits. It's maybe not so much that you couldn't learn this by yourself. You can definitely learn a lot through YouTube and through, maybe working at a company as well. But like getting a network, you have a head start if you have studied together with people who are also likely to enter the industry. So I feel like for networking purposes, studying some games program is actually a good idea.
We have two questions from the chat which cover this topic more from a geographical perspective. First is, if you don't live in a city that has game developers, do you think it would be a good idea to move to one, even if you don't have work there yet and the network, etc.? My answer would be Hamburg is a pretty nice city. And also maybe we can answer that together with a second question. As a freelancer, most work is done remotely, I imagine. How easy and often is work found in the rest of the EU?
So I'd like to take the first question and say, or use the example of, you know, if you want to get into Hollywood, you have to move to LA. Like a lot of people swear by that, and like putting yourself in the pot where the action happens. I think it's not necessary, but it will very likely increase your chances of success, because you will bump into people, you will be closer to the action, and being closer to the action, like there will be events in that city where you can go to when things start opening up again. And that just makes your life so much easier than trying to reach people online through emails and awesome tweets. It is possible, but it's definitely, it makes your life easier to be in the action. But I would also not move to a city without sort of just blindly moving into a city and thinking, okay, well, let's do this freelance thing without any sort of backup thing. I would highly recommend having one foot in some other industry or in some other job, like Mathilde when she worked at the recording studio, just to pay or have enough to pay the bills, and with the second foot you kick open some doors into game audio. I think that is how I would sort of approach the geographical aspect.
About a second job is that game audio is such a or game development in general is such a general field where everything that you have done before games can be helpful for what you are doing later. Like also the audio field is such a broad field. So I was working at a recording studio and I worked a lot with voiceover artists that is already something that is also part of game development if you need voiceover for your game, and then you know how to talk to voiceover artists, stuff like that, or mixing properly, or make stuff sound like juicy and nice for advertisements. That can be a very good thing to know about when you are designing sound for a game as well. So don't be afraid if it's not starting out in game audio like from the start, but in like audio is such a broad thing, and every knowledge you gather for anything audio related can be helpful for the craft in the end.
Mm-hmm. So would you recommend it to start out as a freelancer in game audio, or should you try finding a job in a studio?
I would recommend trying to find a job in the studio, or at least find like a part-time job that allows you to start your networking, or that maybe goes in the general direction of, I mean, if you could get a position as a QA tester and in a company, that would also be a great start, because you will already start to get to know people in the company, in the games industry. You will make friends, and then maybe you will do a project together one day, and you can prove that you are actually a great sound designer as well as being a QA person, or whatever. If you can get into a games company, that is a great start. If you can get into something audio related, that is also a great start. I just think you have to have the goal in sight, like the end goal, and everything that's going like slightly in the right direction is great to start out with, and then you can like move closer and closer and narrow down on hopefully, yeah, on your actual goal.
Do you know if game studios are used to offering internships in game audio specifically? Should one look for that? We also had a question about that on the chat. If does any game company offer internships where the sound designer can learn technical software skills on the job by shadowing the senior engineers? Ivo, do you do that in your current job?
The senior engineers. So yes, companies offer audio internships, and actually I've seen a lot of movement in that regard in the last couple of months on Twitter. Junior sound design roles, internship positions opening. There's definitely there are times when these are open, and then there will be months where like there will be pretty much nothing. And the best way is to just, even if there's no advertised position, just send your application out, and they don't land in the void. They land with some HR department, hopefully, and when an application gets opened, it will be in a pool. And like, for example, for Mathilde, there was not a position open. She just applied there. So okay, then there wasn't a position, but it's all about just shooting yourself into the web, and in the more places you have your application, the better your chances are of succeeding and getting a foot in the door.
This is also a great thing that we can kind of also bring back a little to the point about websites and social media, and drop a little business jargon here, but being top of mind for other people who maybe not now, but at some point in the future will need the services that you offer is never a bad thing. And that active, even if you send out a bunch of emails and no one really responds, I can say my small company gets a ton of emails, people looking for work, and I can tell everyone watching right now, I look at all of that stuff because it is interesting to me, and the people whose work stands out, I save their contact information, and I'm thinking about that. The next opportunity, here's a person who does great, like, I don't know, electronic music, and that's something I'm not good at. I'm going to keep them in mind. So, staying active, whether it be through the process of looking for jobs, and even if they're not advertising a job, just asking, is it possible that a job's coming up? Could I maybe get a head start on that, showing that interest, showing that initiative, so to speak, might already, if you show up with that initiative and that drive and someone else shows up without it and you have the same portfolio, you're going to get the job, not the other person. And it's the same thing with your social media presence. And I wanted to swing back to that really, really quickly. A lot of people get super stressed out about social media because they think they need to have like a Twitter and an Instagram and a Facebook and everything else. And how many TikToks do I need to, how many ticks do I need to talk every single day, kind of thing. I would have a couple quick things to shout out on this topic. Number one, use the social media that you actually enjoy using, because the only way to get any kind of traction on it is to actually use it. And if you hate it, then you're not going to use it and it's going to be a waste of your time. So if you love Twitter and love being active on Twitter, just ignore Instagram. You don't need it. There are game devs everywhere on every platform, and they're only going to see you if you actively use the platform. And if you just have an account, it doesn't really help you if if there's nothing there, if it's basically a barren wasteland. And that other term I want to drop is activity. You have to be active. You can't just post stuff and then disappear and expect that you're going to start a conversation with interesting people that way. You really have to actively engage with people on social media. It's called social media for a reason. You have to go out and start that conversation, or just drop a nice comment on someone else's work, and you never know where it might lead. We just acquired a new project for our company through Twitter, just because I saw this company's game, and it actually had to do with the topic of business. It's like a business simulator, and I said, "Oh, hey, cool! Like, this is so cool. I'm actually like doing the biz dev for a company, and I love your blog posts and blah blah blah." And now we're making the sound design for their game, and that probably never would have happened otherwise if I hadn't just been, I enjoy using Twitter on occasion. I try not to be a freak about it, but I scroll through stuff and, oh, okay, there's something cool. I'm going to write something nice about it and just be a kind human being. And I don't expect anything to come from it, but if it does, that's really, really cool. And real quick to the website, it's one thing that I think a lot of people also get frustrated about. The way I divide website and social media is that your website is the only place on the internet where you have complete control over the experience that people will have when they land on it. And that's, I think, a really powerful tool that people underestimate, because when you're on Twitter, when you're on Facebook, Facebook and Twitter's end goal is not for you to have amazing career success. Their end goal is for people to continue using Facebook and Twitter, and there are distractions and there are flashing lights and GIFs and everything, and people might notice your one minute tweet or post or hashtag, whatever, and then it just goes on by and it's lost forever. But if you can, if you use social media in a way that gets people to your website, then suddenly they're in a place where you control their attention. And if you use that properly, then you can establish, I think, a much better relationship with them than you can just by having a Facebook profile. So I would recommend everyone, you don't have to have an amazing website, but you should have a website that caters to the people you are trying to communicate with, and really design everything that all of your online presence. Sorry, I have so much to say about this topic. Just mute me if I don't shut up. But your entire online presence, it's not about you and about showing off and proving to everyone that you're really cool. It's about the value that you bring to the customers that you are trying to attract. And so you really have to use, that you have to get into that mindset and see things from their perspective. Well, if a game dev and a game developer lands on my website, is it speaking to them, or is it just me showing off my portfolio and look at this cool like behind the scenes clip of some sound design stuff that they probably don't understand or care about that much? They just want to know whether I, can make the kind of sound effects that they need for their game. Lots of other things to think about with that, but having this like customer first mindset is something that a lot of people, I think, are missing. And so they bang their heads against the wall with maybe otherwise interesting initiative, what's the word I'm looking for, job applications, or with cold emails, writing people on Twitter, DMs, whatever. But if you come out and just start talking me, look at me, I'm a sound designer, I'm a composer, here's my portfolio, please, ask me about my rates, whatever, instead of saying, hey, I saw you're working on this thing, and actually, I imagine it could have this kind of music, and I just wrote a piece like that, and maybe you find it interesting, let's start a conversation. Seeing things from the customer's perspective is something that is lacking so amazingly. I see it every day online, people just blasting their stuff in your face online and not considering what the end goal of it is, and not considering the other person in the front of the screen at the end of the day seeing it.
So when we are talking about like applying for a job, because you have lots of good points there, and also you mentioned portfolio. So when you're looking for members for your team or members for your company, what would you like to see in a portfolio?
I'll answer that too real quick, since my mouth is so warmed up now. I'm looking for someone who crafted their portfolio in a way that shows that they thought for at least 2 seconds about who I am and what my company does. I get tons of emails from people that you can tell it's a copy paste. You can tell they sent it just every email they could find, and you could tell that they have no idea who we are or what we do. And that goes straight to the trash every single time. And it's going to be the same probably everywhere else. If you don't put in even the tiniest amount of effort at the front, then why should I expect that you'll put in any effort once I give you the job? So I think every job application and every, just like you wouldn't approach a random person and just start with the same cookie cutter sentence, no matter who they are, what they look like, what the situation was at a party or at a business event. You really need to at least slightly tweak and customize the content that you're sending to people based on what they do and what value you think you can bring them.
I can confirm this. I mean, I sent out 2 applications for my internship, and I landed 2 hits, basically, like the application for Dedelic worked, and Amanita Design. I at least got to meet them and say hello at the offices. So, but what I did is I spent like maybe a month or so really customizing. Like I found this one mini game of the Dedelic game where they didn't have sound in it. I didn't want to like blame some sound designer or anything. So I was happy I found a piece of the game where they actually didn't have sounds, and I put sound design under it to demonstrate like I know your games, and I want to like help, and I'm excited about it. And I for Amanita Design, I recorded like a cover version of a song in their game, and I put some lyrics under it that were describing like how much I would love having an internship with them. And then I translated the lyrics of that song to Czech, so that they, if in case they don't speak English, I don't know, they would have subtitles and stuff like that. And I mean, that is maybe a little bit over the top to do it for every single thing you do for every application. But I can only say so much that the little aspect of being addressed personally and to see that people love what you are doing in an application, that will already open doors. Everybody is flattered. If somebody would write to me on Twitter, hey, I saw what you did for Unrailed, that was just amazing. I would want to talk more to them, because I think that's such a nice thing that they started, like, the conversation, just saying something nice. So yeah.
You're about to get bombed with people.
Oh no!
Oh, Mathilde, Unrailed, it's a masterpiece. Can we please start talking? My friend.
Sure. Please.
I have one more thing to add to Ben's previous speech. So the same guys that Mathilde mentioned earlier, Power Up Audio, they have frequent review streams where they review game audio websites. So that is a good place if you're feeling up for the challenge. You definitely need to swallow your pride, because there are quite a few people watching. But I know another South African guy who was working in London now. He had his website up there, and I think he got some really good feedback from that session. And yeah, coming back to the application, make it personal. It will, like Ben said, like it's going to be so obvious if it's a very generic message. Be honest. Don't make up sort of skills that you don't have, because that will eventually, in some sort of test down the line, it will become apparent that you're lying or you're faking. In some ways, fake it till you make it applies, but I think the approach should be make it personal to the company you're applying, be honest, and yeah, I mean, it's the one thing is being good at your craft, and the other thing is just being just a nice human being to work with. And at the end of the day, I would rather work with someone who's a nice guy, who's not so proficient at his or her tools, than with someone who's beep. So
self-censored. That was that act of sound designing with your mouth, right?
Exactly.
Nice.
The arc back.
Yeah.
But from the craft side you mentioned, would you say that it helps if a career starter specializes maybe in a certain games genre?
That depends on where you are applying and what you're looking to do. I mean, if you want to, if you love weapon sounds, then it might not be the best idea to apply at Nintendo. You might want to apply where Ivo works and work on the next Hitman or something like this. So, you know, if you're a specialist, that's really great. But then you need to search out the place where you most fit into the puzzle, so to speak.
And would you actually say that having a private gaming background is important to work in the industry? Do you have to be a gamer to work in game audio?
I can recommend it because it is always a door opener, or like an icebreaker maybe at a conversation. If you're talking to devs and you are most likely like if you have some games that you love, both of you, that's the perfect start to a conversation. Or also it's good because it's hard to talk about audio. Like music is a bit of an abstract thing because you hear it, but talking about it or finding like the right words to describe music can be hard. So if you like say, it reminds me a bit like, I was such a fan of how they did it in this and that game, or like you say, like when somebody says Nintendo, they already have a certain like sound language in mind, these sort of cute, uplifting sounds, then it's much easier to start the conversation about audio from there, from knowing what Nintendo games usually like sound like. So I feel like it's very helpful to have a background in gaming. Yeah, for those reasons.
So we, for our recruitment recently, one of our questions, as a sort of very casual way to start the interview, we ask what games do they play, and usually we like they play some games, which is good. If you get an application to a game studio where you don't play any games, then that is a little bit worrying, because then I also don't know how much you know about game audio and how much you understand what is needed for a game audio experience. So I think when you're applying for bigger gigs or at bigger studios, I think it's a must to. You don't have to be a gamer. I think the definition of gamer is a little bit washy, but you should at least play games and know what games are and all about. And also, it helps to play some of the games that you're the company you're applying for. Having played a couple of games, it's not always possible, especially when you're applying to 10 different companies. You can't play 10 different games while you're applying, but it's definitely a good investment. It's not wasted time.
Since we are heading closer to the end of our event, some last questions that are a little bit more open. For you personally, is there anything that you wished you had known before you entered the games industry or the job of an audio engineer? Something that you want to tell our audience, don't make that mistake, or do that, it's awesome.
Do that, it's awesome.
Get a rubber lollipop.
Yeah, get a roll. Yeah, I recommend these things. They are super good. True that. No, I think one of the things I didn't expect, there's like one positive surprise and one negative surprise. The positive surprise is that actually the game dev world is pretty small. That it was really quick, like after I started going to certain events, and then I started recognizing those faces on the next event as well. And then all of a sudden I knew that this person was following that person on Twitter, and then they knew that, and he was like the best friend of my brother or whatever. Like the world is small, and the game dev world is also pretty small. So it was fascinating to discover who is knowing who and why. And the more people you know, the more people you know they know, and that was just, it kind of blew my mind when I first discovered that the game dev world is so small. But one thing that I'm still trying to figure out is how to take holidays as a freelancer. can be hard to just say nope, I'm out, because you want to take calls, you want to not miss out, and I'm very afraid of missing out. So I'm still trying to figure out, like, if you have a stable position in a company, then you can take your leave, and you know that everybody will know that you're offline. But if you're a freelancer, it's really hard to, communicate clearly that you're on vacation, especially in a department like sound. What I mentioned earlier, that sometimes there are some very, very last minute requests, and you don't want to be on vacation exactly like the 2 weeks where your game comes out. That happened with Unrailed as well, where they put the release date, like, and we had like a 3 weeks vacation planned, and so we had to finish like 2 tracks and all of the audio QA and everything within a very short time span before the 3 weeks vacation. And boy, these 3 weeks were really necessary to recover from that after that. So yeah, taking vacation is still something I'm trying to figure out. What about you guys?
Ivo, do you have anything which you would have liked to know before entered all this?
Yeah,
stuff?
I think my biggest flaw at the beginning was expecting sort of jobs to fall out of the sky, and that doesn't happen. And especially in these times, you need to be active, and it really helps to get to know people. And hey, we want to get to know people, right? Because we're sitting at home alone, so why not get to know people and establish sort of friendships with people that could potentially develop into the next job, into the next project. So don't be afraid. I know there's a lot of us that are like introverted or a little bit shy, especially in the beginning, but you just gotta be brave and just put yourself out there. And yeah, don't be afraid. Like, the game audio community and the game dev community is surprisingly open and friendly and welcoming and helpful. So don't be discouraged.
That's true. That's true. The game audio community is awesome. Like, so many people ready to help you, like industry veterans dropping in and giving their opinion and helping you. It's a great community.
I would add to that to be genuine. I think even compared to a lot of other industries, the game industry is more personal, if you could put it that way, especially if you're freelancing, working with indies. You know, it's you and a small team, sometimes even a solo developer. So you know, just showing up with, you know, it's not going to be the same situation as a business meeting at Microsoft or something. You know, there's much more value placed on the personal connection between people and teamwork and how well do we get along, things like that. And so Ivo mentioned before being honest in terms of your resume, because people will sniff you out later. Just being honest in general, and this also relates back to the topic of don't wait to start networking, connecting with people, because it's better to show up and just honestly say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm interested in learning. And just showing that genuine interest is better than showing up 2 years later with maybe a small skill set, because there's 2 years of lost time, lost networking possibilities. That would be a really painful loss for anyone who's not yet already on it. And whether that's pick your pleasure, so to speak, whether you liked to just hang out in forums and interact with people that way, or you like to go to real events, or you like a mix. You know, you got to do you at the end of the day, and don't be afraid to push your own comfort zone a little bit in pursuit of more, so to speak. Another thing that I wish I had, especially as a freelancer, had thought about much earlier in time, and I already spoke about it a little bit, is just seeing yourself as a business entity and understanding that there are a lot of basic business fundamentals that you cannot survive without, at least not without a base level knowledge of. You know, a classic and simple example would be, if you're a freelancer, who's responsible for your financial situation at the end of the day? It's you. Who has to deal with the tax man? It's you. There's no finance department of a big company, you know, that just magically makes things happen. But that example, you know, that's a forced example. Everyone has to deal with the tax man, whether you like it or not. But a bunch of other stuff, such as reaching out to clients, understanding how to design, you know, your portfolio or your website in a way that actually speaks to people. So many topics that, you know, you will learn more in maybe a business podcast or something, more about them there than you will on a game audio forum. And don't be afraid to look for information in other places, because one thing I learned way too late is that business is business. At the end of the day, 90% of what my company does and what, you know, Apple does at its core is the same. We have the same, you know, we have the same issues. We have a service or a product. We have to sell it. We have to communicate. We have to market ourselves. And whether you're a business of just one freelancer, or whether you're a business of 1 million, you know, those core principles and those core ideas don't really change. So thinking that picking up a business book doesn't make sense because you're a game audio freelancer and that's creative, and, you know, all of this other stuff, that's a big no-no. Definitely don't fall into that trap, thinking that somehow as an artist or a composer or something that you were way, you know, that's a different thing than, you know, running any other kind of business, because in most cases it's not.
So yeah, to wrap everything up at this point, thank you so much for joining us here today and bringing in your first-hand experience. And also thank you to the chat, to everybody watching, and also see this as networking opportunity, because you can head over to our Discord. You can still ask your questions there. You will find some links there, and maybe yeah, you will realize that you have been in the same chat, and then you see the people again. So see it as first point of contact there. And so in the end, usually we are also asking if companies have like open positions at the time, internships, or maybe some updates you would like to share. So is there any project you would like to share at this point with us?
I know that in Hamburg right now, isn't Deep Silver Fish Labs looking for a senior audio designer? That is one open position I know of. But I mean, the good thing about the pandemic is that there are many open job positions that are allowing, like internationally. I think there was one question about Europe before. And there are some newsletters who are sending out like indie jobs, especially, or like smaller companies. And there are many positions I have seen these days that are offering remote work, even if you are like not based where exactly in the country where they are based. So that is an opportunity that right now you can definitely take, start working internationally remote with teams. Many open positions, most of the time though, they are for sound designers and not for composition. Yeah.
All right.
I can add to that. Sorry, real quick. Our company, I should say, Indra and I, we've branched out a little bit because we've been doing this for a while, and I was so excited to be invited to speak today because, as I may have mentioned before, there's a list of things you do, and you can, tick next to every single one of them because we did them all wrong for quite a while before we figured stuff out. Made a lot of mistakes, suffered unnecessarily in many ways. And so both of us are actively pursuing, outside of the sound and music that we create for games, to new projects. Indra's passion is the technical side, and he's actually a very competent technical sound designer. And for anyone who's interested in learning more about that side of it, because we got a lot of questions, and there are always a lot of questions about do I need to know game engines? How does Unity work? How important is middleware? Especially from a lot of people who come from other disciplines like sound for film or just music production. These are the tools that they won't know from those other places yet. And Indra streams live every second Tuesday right now on our YouTube channel, and it's just a buffet. You can come by and just ask him to show you something in Fmod or in Unity or whatever, and he will do your best to answer your questions. I don't know if he's still watching the stream, but I'll post a link to our YouTube channel in the stream. And then otherwise, you might have also noticed that my passion is the business aspect, and I've started also a blog, and I've been tweeting mostly on my personal Twitter account about just simply the business of doing game audio. There are lots of resources for the sound design and how to compose music. Those are everywhere, really easy to find, and from people way more talented than me that I could never expect to top in terms of teaching someone sound design. But I think there are very few good resources for how to approach the business of freelancing in the game audio world. There are a couple for sure, but I'm kind of throwing my hat into it as well with a new project called the Game Audio Pro, and I'll post a link about that as well. So those are two resources that I hope can help people on two of the topics that I see most people struggling with, which is the tech side of game audio and the business side of game audio. Most of the time, the sound design and music people at least feel semi-comfortable with already, and it's those other two things that trip them up a lot. So
that sounds absolutely awesome. And I'm very sure that a lot of people who are watching tonight will really appreciate this. So yes, please share the link on the YouTube chat and also on our Discord so people can find it. That's a really great project. Yeah, to the three of you, thanks so much for your time. It's been 2 hours since we started, so we'll leave you into your evening now. But thanks so much for talking to us and for answering all that questions, and yeah, for supporting the Game Starter event. It's been really fun the past 2 hours, and I saw in the chat that people appreciated a lot and learned a lot, and we hope to continue the conversation on Discord or maybe on the next physical event in a couple of months, hopefully. And yeah, see all of you again there.
Yeah,
Thanks
don't
for
be
watching.
afraid to reach out. Everyone who's watching, reach out to us personally on the Discord channel, through whatever channel you want to find us. I'm sure Ivo and Mathilde feel the same. If you have a question, ask it. We're real people. We're happy to help. And thanks again. I'm sure I speak for the other two as well when I say big fat thank you to Gamecity for putting on these events and for supporting the gaming community as a whole. here in Hamburg, which would make Hamburg a wonderful city. Were you considering relocation? Someone maybe, I think, mentioned before, a little shameless self-promotion, but wow, what a great scene. So much fun here.
Yeah, nothing to add there. So thank you, everybody. Then see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.